Welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times of ours. And in today's episode, I really wanted to unpack an experience that I had about being alone in nature, and what that does to you, how cathartic it is to be with yourself, by yourself, without any distractions, how healing it is, but also how scary it can be. And there's some very practical reasons why we don't do it, but also there's a lot of excuses that we make, and ultimately it's because we're afraid to do it. We're afraid that we have other things to do that are a priority, or that it might be boring, or what if nothing happens, or I don't know what to do. But the act, the science, the art of just being by yourself with no distractions is how we process life. And I didn't really understand that on a deep kind of visceral level, like feeling it in my body, until last week. So I want to unpack that. It's super important. It's very basic, but I feel like this episode is necessary in order to convince you to make the time to do it. So let's get into it. I hope you enjoy. Hey everybody, look at this little setup I've got here. I'm on a little chair. It's a little like a fold out picnic chair. I'm in a room here that's in flux. So it was super clean, and then now it's like a storage facility for other people. So I'm sitting here in the only free space in this whole room that is not a complete and utter disaster. An utter disaster. I've been drinking this. It's maybe Russian, maybe Mongolian mineral water. Sponsored by Chortok, the mineral water of podcasters. Delicious. So today, I really wanted to unpack an experience that I had recently that was shocking, that was confronting to say the least, and very revealing. Okay. We are getting faster. Everything is about speed now. If you think about, why would you buy a new updated phone? Why would you buy the latest iPhone? Well, because it processes faster, nicer pictures, that which means faster gadgets and gadgets. We need more chips from NVIDIA. We need more, faster, right? Internet speeds, AI processing time. Everything is about speed, which is cool. Trust me, it's cool, because I don't know if you've got a Mac product, but when you're waiting and you see that little lollipop going in circles, I don't even does it do that anymore? Anyway, we don't like waiting uselessly and frustratingly staring at a computer waiting. But in our deep pursuit for speed, we've sacrificed a lot in terms of peace, in terms of respite. Respite, some people say respite. I say respite, relaxation, calm. And I thought I was doing pretty good, to be honest. I thought I was doing my parts to relax, to meditate, and to stay calm, stay cool, keep it together, Andrew, right? Because I got a lot of responsibilities. I travel a lot. I have kids, all this stuff. I thought I was managing quite well. And then I took some time off. And then I went to the countryside. So here in Mongolia, my wife and I, we invested in some property, some land, which is relatively inexpensive compared to anything in America. And it's right by a river, and it's very beautiful. It's the last property next to what they call the President's Road. And I believe the president just drives up and down the street. I don't know. Mongolia, fun fact, has a prime minister and a president. And I keep on asking my wife, how can you have both? And she says, you just do. And I say, what do they do? And she says, they just go around. helicopters and stuff. She has no idea. But there's some President's Road, so it's like the end of the road, end of the line, and just this beautiful stream that's like my stream. It's so nice. And out there, I just want to fill you in a little bit. When we're in our property, which luckily has a fence, um, there are animals that just come and go. Like I woke up one morning and there was about 20 cows sprinting. I've never seen a cow sprint, but they were in a line sprinting and nobody was telling them to go anywhere, but they were so hungry. They were so excited. They found a new patch of grass and they just kind of, yeah, wild. And they were just eating grass and I saw them sprinting. There's some horses that come by and like our grass locally and it's give and receive, right? So they eat a little bit and then they poo a little bit, right? And then they're dogs. There are all these dogs. We saw some beautiful dogs. They're just wild dogs and they just come and they ask us for food. One giant dog comes and just asks us to scratch him and then he goes away. They're all super peaceful. Anyway, so we've had this land for like a couple years, something like that, but we only went on weekends. We finally got a really nice tent, so we set it up. After the world tour, I needed some R&R, so I decided to just chill, go to the land, hang out. The plan was to go for maybe a week, maybe a few days, see how long we can last. Now, I don't do this. I grew up in the city. I'm a city boy. Camping it never made sense to me. Because the last time I went camping before this, I went with my friend David. And we basically walked for 2 hours to find our campsite. Then he took, because I didn't know how to help him. I asked if he wanted help, and I think he needed to prove that he knew what he was doing. So it took him about an hour to set up his hammock tent. It was like a hammock that was also a tent for mosquitoes. And so and then we ate some meal where you pour hot water and then you get mac and cheese. Or like the dehydrated meals. You can have steak and mashed potatoes. It's crazy. It's like powder and then you pour water on it and then it just turns into like a meal, right? But after all said and done, like everything, you're setting up, you're basically just sitting around the house and doing what you do in the house, except you're doing it in the forest. It's like, what's the point of all this? We could have just stayed at home. But anyway, for some people, it's really, really this sacred thing. So I tried to just enjoy the experience and I went out in the countryside with my kids. We have a minivan out here and typically we don't drive it through the river because that's how you have to get through this river to get to our property. We hire these taxi drivers who are just these guys in these Russian Jeeps who go, 5 feet, 4 feet through water. And I have some footage on Facebook where I call them the Mongolian Jason Bourne because you could see that the water is coming into the van because the doors were all rusted out. Anyway, this time we ventured ourselves and we drove through the water. It was pretty scary, but we made it. Got to our property, started hanging out. So this is all like preamble. This is all just context. Then we're there. We have a really nice new tent that's set up. It's like in the shape of a yurt or a ger, as they call it here, like those Mongolian things. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'm chilling. So then sitting around waiting for something to happen. And that's the point, is that nothing happened. Nothing's supposed to happen. You're supposed to relax. And so I'm like, what do I do? I just kind of, what to play the guitar. I don't really know how to play the guitar, but I guess I'll just play. So I started playing the guitar a bit, hanging out with my kids a bit, but they wanted to play because their cousins were there. So they were playing. My wife and her sisters were there, but they were talking in Mongolian. So I'm kind of just by myself, in a way being forced to just be by myself. So that began this. We ended up staying for 5 days and I went through such an existential crisis. I had moments of extreme tears where I realized that I'm just so busy all the time. I haven't really stopped to do nothing in the longest time. Okay? I haven't stopped to just breathe in life and process life in a granular way. I do it again. I reflect a lot. I think a lot. I meditate a lot. I pray a lot. But I don't just stop and look at life and let life just be there and I can just observe it, not for any stretch of time. And it's unbelievably uncomfortable because you got to look at yourself. And this is the point of this episode, okay, is that I urge every single person, if you can, to make this time to just be by yourself for a stretch of time. If you're single, let's say, just go to the forest, go to some forest and spend the day. If you can, 2 days. If you have a family, if you have little kids, it's a little bit more challenging because they need you, right? But still, try to make at least a day happen where you can just be by yourself with no distractions for an entire day at least. So back to the story is, I had all these feelings that bubbled up to the surface, to my mind, to my consciousness, that I hadn't been suppressing. It's just I hadn't had time to look at. So our body does something very similar where we are constantly eating, especially if you're a snacker, but even if you're not. We eat foods in weird combinations that aren't natural. So like eating, proteins and starches together, you're not supposed to do that. And if you do, not at the exact same time. There's like an order of things. And when you mix and match food in the wrong order at the wrong time, your body can't process it all. So it's like, okay, chill. I'll get the main stuff. I'll get the vitamins and the nutrients, sure. And I'll give those to you, right? But also I'm going to have to store away this stuff over here in your gut lining, and I'll get to it later. But then that later never happens because you keep on doing it and it just keeps on storing and storing. So we have this stockpile of unprocessed food inside of us. There's a whole ordeal. I don't want to go down that road, but it's the same with our emotions and, our thoughts, is that we accumulate and never process enough because we never have time. We never make the time and the space to just sit and be in stillness. And it is so cathartic, but it's also scary. I do have to say it's not always pleasant because it means looking at yourself like fully. Like nobody really wants to walk around naked. Let's take away the act of sex, right? But even just like if you're married, to be fully naked in front of your spouse in like on a beach is like kind of an intimidating proposal because we all have like insecurities about different parts of our body, whatever. For most of us, for you Adonis gods and goddesses, sure. But it's the same thing with looking at ourselves spiritually, being naked in front of ourselves. There's like, all of us have some traits where we're like, I've been a little sketchy lately in this aspect of my life, or I've been pretty angry lately, whatever the case may be. And so, for me, my time was, I have a lot of going on the tour. We just came back from the world tour, and you meet so many people, and it was so inspiring, but I also heard a lot of sad stories.
Hey there, it is Benji here. I want to ask for your attention for just a second. We are asking y'all who have been benefiting from the podcast for just one small favor. We don't ask for much. In fact, we actually try very hard not to ask much. But if you have benefited from this content in the podcast, then I want to encourage y'all to consider becoming a donor for High Noon. Yes, we are still a nonprofit and we rely on your donations to function. And if you would like to just donate $10 a month, if you are looking for a way to contribute your cash to something really meaningful, then I hope that High Noon can be that thing for you. So you can go to highnoon.org/donate. You can click in a link somewhere down below this episode and become a donor for just $10 a month or $20 or $100 or $1,000, whatever it is, guys. It is truly helpful. All right. So go check that out if you have benefited from this podcast in any way over the years. Lots of love.
And then it got me thinking about my own self and my own kind of parents and my situation in my family. And I realized that I haven't really thought a lot about that. I've been reacting a lot just because I haven't had time to really feel. But that when I was in the countryside, I could start to process the world tour, all the feelings that I had, all the feelings that came up. I could then start to think about my relationship with my own kids. I started to think about my relationship with my wife and like the good stuff and the challenges. And at the end of the day, honestly speaking, it was just, I just felt a tremendous amount of grace. Now, to clarify, I mean at the end of the time period, not day, because at the end of the first day, I was actually quite sad. At the end of the second day, I was also quite sad. It was like a lot of sadness that bubbled up. And I'm a happy person, but we all have sadness. And for me, it was like the sadness that came up was the idea that I'm getting older. I'm in my midlife. Uncle Dave, if you're listening to this, he is a bit of a bully in a funny way, but he loves the fact that I'm way older than most of our staff. I'm like double the age of some, David Hewish, but I'm like significantly like a decade older than a lot of them, decade plus than our chapter leaders. And so Uncle Dave likes to pull me into his demographic sometimes and be like, you're pretty old like me, right? And he pulls me in. And I always jokingly resist and be like, nah, you're the old guy. I'm young. I'm like these guys. But realistically speaking, this came up in the Bay Area. We were going out for breakfast and he mentioned the fact that I was a middle-aged man. And I was like, come on. And then I thought about it. I was like, oh my God, I'm a middle-aged man. Holy Moses. So that's hitting me hard too. For any of you guys out there in your 40s, like obviously we want to live till we're 100, 120, whatever AI, this AI plus biology, all these new, whatever. We could live a long time, but maybe not. You never know. That stuff started coming up. So, and my kids are getting older. My kids don't need me as much anymore. When you have these little kids, they need you for everything. When they're really little, they can't move without you. They can't roll around even in the beginning. And then they can crawl around, but they can't walk around. And then they can walk, but they can't think. So you gotta feed them and you gotta do all this stuff, right? But then when they get older, they don't need you as much. And then you say, well, what do I do? So I was being confronted with all this stuff. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because we all have stuff. And I've been dealing with a bunch of mentees. I always have at least a handful. And there's this ongoing theme throughout my mentorship of other people that, people are doing well and they're counting their days of sobriety. I haven't watched porn in a long time. I haven't masturbated in a long time, etc., etc. And then they get sideswiped. They just have a really dark period of time and they completely go in the wrong direction. They go in opposition to the person that they want to be. And they just have this really bad lapse or relapse or series of relapse. And they don't understand why. And this one guy in particular that I'm working with, he has some dark side of him that just pops up and punches him in the face and then goes back into hiding. And he's like, what was that? Imagine you just have this mysterious figure in your life. You're just walking down the street and every so often he just comes out and strangles you, punches you, kicks you while you're down, and then he runs away. And you're like, well, that was weird. But imagine that's your whole life. And it's never in the same frequency or time of day or location. He just randomly pops out, beats you up, and then runs away. That's a brutal reality if you were to imagine it. But this is what we do to ourselves in many cases because we have this darkness, these shadows inside of us that pop out, assault us, and then run back into hiding. And we're like, we just feel used. We're like, what just happened? I had a plan. I had momentum. I was going in this direction. Then I was assaulted. And now I feel like I've lost all my momentum. And you cannot understand these shadows that you have unless you give them space to bubble up And unless you have the courage to look at them in the face, and we all have them, every single person. Because let's say you work diligently for many years on your own shadows. Well, you'll still have fears about society. You'll still look at the shadows of your family or your community or your society. In the divine principle, there's like stages, right? In the second blessing. Plenty of things to look at in our culture. Look at America. If you're from Europe, Philippines, wherever, there's a lot of darkness, and it's scary actually. So we all have work to do, I would say everybody has a lot of work to do in terms of their own personal shadows. But even after you deal with that, then there's layers to this, right? There's even your ancestral shadows still live within you. This is not just a, ancestral spiritual concept. This is now biological through epigenetics, the evidence that your DNA is telling a story of your history. Your ancestors live within you, and they're wrestling within you. And they want the evil guys who have done a lot of bad stuff want to use your body for evil, and the good guys want to use you for righteousness, or gals if you're a gal. And they're constantly wrestling, and unless you let them bubble up, make their case, and defeat them, then they will always just kind of undermine you unconsciously. And so this is my case. This is the entire thrust of this episode. Is at all stages, I've been working on this with great intentionality since my time in High Noon about 9-10 years ago. If you can hear this horn, this guy's working through some stuff. I don't know. There's a guy on the road nearby who's just honking at life. But even though I've been working on this for quite some time, I haven't experienced anything like that until I stopped for a bunch of days. It was 5 days, right? Like a vacation, just not doing stuff. Always on Saturdays and Sundays, I want to do stuff. On Saturdays, I want to go out, go on adventures. On Sundays, I want to hang out with community. I love when I'm in America going to our church community. Shout out Denver community. So many great people out there. But we don't just stop most of the time. We don't just stop and sit and do nothing because maybe we fear that we're going to be bored. I am a busybody, so I feel like I'm wasting my time. But actually, if we don't stop and just be with ourselves, then we're just accumulating and accumulating gunk and not processing it, not taking the time for it to bubble up, for us to look at it, deal with it, understand it, heal it, and let it be liberated, and then we can move on. It's the only way. And I would really recommend that you make this sacred time. And again, we can try to fit it into our busy schedules. And if you have kids, especially little kids, good luck. I know one of my mentees has to wake up early, and I remember doing that too. When I had little kids, as soon as they wake up, they want all of you. They don't want you to look anywhere else other than at them. They're really attention needy. And so even if they wake up early, then you got to wake up earlier if you want to have me time. And that's all well and good, but that's barely maintaining yourself. Even if you have like an hour a day to meditate, that's amazing, but still it's just maintenance. To do a deep dive, I don't know the frequency. This is all new to me. I would say annually at least, one weekend, at the very, very least. I would say a healthier thing would be once a month to take a day to be by yourself. I'd say once a quarter, take a weekend to be by yourself. And once a year, if you can. I mean, this is not something that I know that is sustainable. I don't know that I can just be by myself in nature for 5 days at a time. I don't know. Who knows? All I know is that you got to find your own cocktail and your own solutions. But the real magic is allowing yourself to be in a space where you're almost inviting your shadows to come. But if you do it in the daylight, like if you do some crazy vision quest, there's all these tech billionaires and millionaires who, instead of religion and instead of God, they worship ayahuasca and these experiences which simulate the experience of God, except it's just sponsored by basically you poisoning yourself. That's what ayahuasca is. That's what peyote is. Even magic mushrooms. It's your body is hallucinating because it thinks it's dying. They don't tell you that, but that's the reality. Psilocybin, all this stuff. It's like your body's going loopy, and these people have these deep experiences. I saw God. I saw these patterns and all this stuff. And you can get the same stuff in a deep state of meditation. By the way, you don't need anything external. But these people, they do this, and they have these deep realizations, life changing, and that becomes their religion, which is funny because they're usually anti-religious, but that becomes their religion, and then they're changed after it, right? And this originated thousands of years ago with vision quests that people would go on in native cultures, but nowadays we don't do that. And I think we should, without the peyote, without the stuff that's going to make you hallucinate. Just being in a space where you invite your demons and looking at them and doing it in a safe way. That's what I was kind of going off with these vision quests. Probably not going out into some deep, remote place where nobody can find you for a week, because that might be too much. Don't start there, okay? Because that is what some people do. I just watched that movie Into the Wild. Unbelievable. I remember reading that book. It's about a young man who ends up dying in Alaska in a bus, but he's in search of meaning. And it's funny, he died in isolation because he ended up eating the wrong, spoiler alert. He ended up dying, but his last realization is that there is no joy without other people. So he died in isolation. So don't put yourself in a dangerous situation, but to be by yourself in a way where you can meet your demons, talk to them, wrestle with them a little bit, allow them to be liberated. That's something that I think I said in a recent podcast, but we started to talk about in our most recent iteration of our 2-day workshop, was that your shadows aren't bad. They're all that you know. They're the things that have been kind of protecting you in a way. But just say, I don't need you anymore. You served me in the past, but I let you go, shadow. You're gone. But the only way you can do that is if you're in their presence. And it's honestly scary. And I mean, this sounds abstract, but it could just mean allowing yourself to feel sad. Allowing yourself just to feel sad. Allowing yourself just to be regretful. Feel regret. Feel guilt. Feel the uncomfortable feelings, just to be there. But not to stay there, but to just to let it rise up. Understand it a little bit more. Where did you come from? Why do I feel like this? What's going on here? Then talk about it with somebody. Then pray about it. These things, that's the only way that, by shoving them down and never thinking about them, that's how you do regrettable things. That's how you prolong your porn addiction. But to really heal on a deep level, it requires many things. A lot of communication and talking it out, and a lot of hugs and a lot of validation from the people in your life that love you, but also time alone. Learning how to experience a range of emotions, learning how to love every aspect of yourself is a non-negotiable element of the recovery process. So I'm going to leave it here. I feel like I've kind of beat this horse. I don't want to use that analogy. I've belabored this point. And so let's leave it at that. Please take time. And again, there's probably programs that you can join or whatever, but I think that it's as simple as being by yourself in nature, especially. Just not going anywhere or doing anything, just sitting and waiting for stuff to bubble up is something that humans used to do because we didn't have as many distractions as we do. Now we have endless arrays of distraction. Pick your poison, right? But in the past, on a Saturday, 120 years ago, if you didn't have a book, then you had a rock. You're just throwing a rock. If you didn't have a rock, then you had a tree, and you're just sitting in a tree thinking about a rock. But you had to basically, just sit and be alone sometimes because there's no, electricity. Say 200 years ago, no even electricity then you're looking at the stars at night. You're not staring at a computer late at night. So now that we have the option to be distracted and to be consumed by technology, sometimes we need to opt out, unplug from the system, and plug into ourselves. And it's not always pretty, it's not always fun, but it's very, very meaningful. Anyway, I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you next week.
Hey, did you know that our team wants to do more events? Well, if you want to bring the High Noon message to your community or group, then let us know and we'll try to work something out. There's a simple application that you can fill out right now at highnoon.org/invite. And one of our team members will get back to you to see what's possible. That's highnoon.org/invite. All right, see you in the next episode.